I read recently that if 2020 were one of those story problems in math class, it would go something like this. If you're moving down a river at 2 miles per hour and your canoe loses a wheel, how much pancake mix would you need to shingle your roof? Now, I'll confess, when I was in fourth grade, every story problem sounded a lot like that to me. And yet, somewhere along the way, I learned the value of those plus and minus columns all too well. And as a result, I have been careful to keep up with things like balancing my checking account and saving money. I am a rule follower. I feel guilty for jaywalking, and I try to do all those things my parents taught me to. Never leave a job, my father would say, without first having another job. Plan for a rainy day and start saving early for retirement. Make sure you put some money aside each month. Drink 8 glasses of water before 3 o'clock in the afternoon and eat an apple every day. My mother and father knew how to be prepared and were above all else resilient. Both of them spent their early years trying to find ways to survive in the panhandle of Texas during the Dust Bowl. And beyond that, search for the good, find meaning in life while they endured the devastation caused by the Great Depression and World War II. And so, I wonder what advice they might have given me if they could have foreseen the havoc a bat in China would inflict upon the world in a year well beyond their lifetimes. How does one prepare for something so unexpected? As I look back on 2020, those lessons I learned in childhood seem kind of like looking both ways before crossing the street and then getting hit by an airplane. It seems reasonable then for any of us to look back and become fearful and cynical, to dread the unknown, to just give up, say, what could possibly happen next? Bring on the locusts, why not? But I know a lot of you, and I know that's not who you are. In fact, I would venture to guess that at one point or another in the last few weeks, you've done what I have. You've stopped to take stock of 2020, tried to salvage the good parts, to dig the life lessons out from beneath all the wreckage, to search for meaning in a year we would all just rather forget. Now, I need to say that during this time I have avoided thus far any truly personal ordeal, such as the death of a loved one, the forfeiture of my job or my business, the fatigue of parenting and schooling a young child while attempting to work, the emotional exhaustion of being a frontline healthcare provider, or the constant worry about the welfare of an elderly parent barred from receiving personal visits. And I cannot possibly appreciate how any of that truly feels. And yet, I am beginning to have this feeling that the universe is shaking us, begging us to wake up, to keep our eyes open, to find light in all this darkness. With that in mind, I invite you to join me in recognizing the ways in which we have indeed managed to persevere and even thrive in the midst of so much tragedy. More Americans turned out to vote than any other time in history, and our election officials managed to keep the process safe from corruption. In spite of dire warnings of long lines and violence at the polls, every registered voter who wanted to cast a ballot had the opportunity to do so safely. And time again in the weeks following, the courts in state after state have ruled that the counting of the votes was accurate and fair. The development of multiple vaccines to combat the pandemic looks promising, and if the rollout goes well, anyone who wants to take it should have the opportunity to do that by next fall. With that said, we cannot ignore the fact that the pandemic has made all too evident the inequities of race. The numbers tell the story. People of color are far more likely than whites to contract the virus, be hospitalized, and to die. And the senseless murder of George Floyd opened our collective eyes to racial injustice too long ignored and yet prevalent in our country. We have learned the work for equality, for racial justice is complicated and it is sure to be difficult. Dr. Ibram X. Kendi calls us to be anti-racist, to be united in the pursuit to end racial and ethnic bias, to encourage conversations that might not always be comfortable, but require instead courage and respect and compassion. And finally, we have the words of the late Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg to inspire us. She said, "A meaningful life is one in which we make things a little better for people less fortunate. Our lives should be lived not just for ourselves, but for our community." The notorious RBG also reminds us that real change, enduring change in our society is incremental. It's something, she said, that happens one step at a time. Last March, as it was becoming more and more evident with each passing day that life as we knew it would be different for the foreseeable future, I began looking for online yoga classes. I reasoned that the exercise would be good for me, and besides, every person I've ever known that practiced yoga seemed somehow more laid back. Those people are unflappable. I now practice under 3 different instructors, and I try to find myself on the mat at least 5 days a week. One can never be too serene. While all the instructors I follow are great, I find one of them, Lisa, incredibly wise, and her classes, by the way, are deceptively difficult. Yet I come away from each feeling energized with something to think about. A few months back, Lisa had us hold a pose that I found difficult to maintain. She was silent for what seemed to be an eternity, and then, just as I was wondering if she would ever allow us to move on to an easier position, she began to speak. "When you're in one spot," she said, "one position, explore what you can do there. Don't ever just be waiting for someone to give you permission to move, for that next thing to happen. What a waste of time. Nope. Instead, see what you're capable of accomplishing wherever you are right now." So how can we be helpful to those who are grieving or stressed out, even now? In a word, presence. With our need to be physically distanced or isolate ourselves as best we can, presence can seem a tall order these days. Heck, we can't even be present with friends and family in the same way this holiday season, but although presence looks and feels different in the age of COVID, it is still possible and is critically needed. Presence involves much more than listening and talking, and more asking gentle questions of how the other is feeling. It's not about offering our advice and our experience. Presence is not about fixing what's broken, but instead taking a journey alongside a wounded traveling companion. And that's not all so difficult when we realize that we all bear the scars of experiencing real life. Even in the most empathetic among us, we will never fully know how a particular person feels, but we do know what it means to be frightened, lost, angry, and alone. Rather than avoiding or attempting to displace those feelings, acknowledging the feelings and patiently sitting with them defines authentic presence. Healing, hope, and peace arrive according to their own schedule, and achieving a state of perpetual bliss is an unrealistic goal. We all have downer moments, and not everything broken can be repaired to its original pristine condition. That's why we need each other, to see life through. This imperfect, hurting, yet beautiful space and time we share and wander within. And during this drawn-out moment in time, things like FaceTime, Google Duo, Skype, Zoom, or any number of video chat applications can provide us with the great option for reaching out. So do that. Reach out. Make a date to be present. This year, 34 people have joined Salem. They are, you are, we are, from all walks of life. And although most of us live near Doylestown, others are scattered across the country. And even more people, those who aren't members yet, tune in weekly. Here's a shout out to our friends in Canada. Now we might ask, okay, but what happens to this group in 2021 when, God willing, the dam breaks and a vaccine proves effective? when it's safe to open the floodgates once more to a life that seems more normal. That will most certainly be a time when we can again come together inside Salem's church building, and David will be there for those who can and want to meet together indoors. But we also plan to continue gathering right here online, and we hope you'll continue to join us. Because over the last 10 months together, along with David, you and I have built a community of people who are not afraid to ask tough questions. We are okay with the idea that no one person or group has all the answers. We are present for each other in good times and bad. We are discovering new ways of giving back to our larger community. And we will continue to welcome all comers. Doesn't matter how you get here, where you live, or who you happen to love. We believe in the worth and dignity of all people. We understand we're all seekers on this journey together. And more importantly, we believe in good. We work for justice and peace. We trust science, and we understand our collective future is linked to other nations and the actions we take together to curb climate change and champion conversation over conflict. Together, we are setting aside fear, and we are finding reason to hope in a world that too often seems chaotic and senseless. I guess that's why they call it faith. So as we head into a new year, why not continue this journey together and invite others to join us? If we do that, there is no telling what we can create in the coming months. I mean, if we've learned anything from 2020, it's that stranger things have happened.